Hello and welcome to our annual look with the commercial heads of each of the four proud provinces of Ireland at what the new rugby season is going to hold. We missed out on last year's for some strange reason. I can't quite put my mind on it, but we're joined today by Kevin Quinn, who is responsible for all the commercial and marketing activities at Leinster Rugby. You're very welcome back to Sport for Business, Kevin.
Thanks, Rob. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
It kind of feels a little bit more like normal that here we are in September and we're talking about the start of a new rugby season. But before we get on to the good stuff, just talk us a little bit through what it's been like over the last 18 months from a Leinster Rugby perspective in terms of both the management of the team, the engagement with the fans, and basically keeping the show on the road.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yeah, I suppose challenging, difficult are probably all the words that people say, and you can't hold back from that on a number of different fronts. I suppose for our team, for the commercial team here in Leinster Rugby, we would have gone through some very, very challenging months where working on short time, some of the team working, even 2 days a week, in an effort to try and stave off the costs. I think we're on record. I know Mick is on record, so am I, of saying that over 50% of our overall revenues have come through the gates. So without that revenue over 18, 19 months, that had a significant impact on the organization. And even since then, so we lost, 2 or 3, 4 really good people from the team, went to different jobs. I suppose looking for potentially a little bit more security because, in the midst of the pandemic, particularly in sport, it's reliant on people coming through the gates. You can understand if you've got rent or a mortgage or a family to look after that you might look for something that's a little bit more stable, particularly when nobody knew when COVID was going to be over. So very challenging in that front, challenging too for our season ticket holders, for our supporters. They were, really the bedrock, the cornerstone in terms of our commercial program, in terms of our season ticket holders. We couldn't offer season ticket hold last year because we didn't know if we'd have a season to offer them. We didn't know if they could come into any matches. But again, just in terms of how loyal and steadfast, how well they supported us, we did launch an official membership program. And in reality, it was our supporters putting their hands in their pockets and just showing their financial support for Leinster Rugby, which is remarkable because although we did, pivot some way, we produced quite a bit of new digital content, long-form video interviews, short-term videos. We interviewed a new quarterly magazine that was exclusive again for our official members. So they'd all get the match day program. They couldn't go to the game. And we did a number of key initiatives with our, some of our premium partners and our title partner, Bank of Ireland, in terms of, virtual Seas of Blue, where we'd have a lot of people on the big screens in the Aviva Stadium cheering on and waving the flags, and they could, and Bearing Point were another great partner of ours who are very active in terms of enabling some of these great new initiatives. So, and likewise then, I suppose we're hugely lucky in that we have a good relationship, a long-term commercial relationship, sponsorship and partnership relationship with our key partners. And again, all of them stood by us, which was just remarkable because, as you can imagine, a lot of the benefit, you'd say a lot of the benefit of working with a brand like Leinster Rugby and a sports franchise is around our events, being able to bring guests, being able to entertain, being able to activate as well. You've got your brand associated with live, whether that's on television, but with people in the grounds. And obviously we couldn't deliver that last season. So we're hugely grateful for all of our partners who have stuck with us through that difficult time. And to where we are now. So as you say it, so the optimism is back, although we lost some really good people from the team. We've hired in a couple of really good people. It's been a really interesting process, really good energy, enthusiasm, new ideas from the new people arriving on the team. We have supporters back in the stadium, which is remarkable. We had our pre-season friendly against Harlequins there just a week and a half ago. That was in Aviva Stadium with just under 10,000 people. But the positive feedback I received from so many people just about the atmosphere, the buzz being back, and also the players, Rob, were it was amazing. Even with 10,000, when they were under the Aviva Stadium waiting to come out there, they said it felt like, God, we were wondering if it was full, because just appreciating that noise and feeding off that energy of the crowd, they said it was just was wonderful. So,
of course, one of the big changes this year is the dawn of the new United Rugby Championship, the Guinness Pro 14 of old. We've carried a lot of content from Martin Anayi and from Dee Forbes. It's going to be back on terrestrial television. But most importantly, it's going to be a real breath of fresh air into the club rugby game outside of those Heineken Cup weekends. How are you looking forward to that at Leinster?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, really looking forward to that. I mean, there's obviously that whole positivity piece about just having people back. But I think too, in terms of as a tournament, you know, some reporters had said that, you know, the Guinness Pro 14 as it was, maybe the Irish provinces were doing too well in that maybe they were winning too many matches and it sort of become a foregone conclusion. But this, with the introduction of the 4 top teams in South Africa, really introduces some jeopardy. You know, to put that in perspective, those 4 teams would cater for about 85% of the team that beat the Lions over the summer. So you can see hereby these are serious sports franchises, serious professional rugby teams, and it's going to be really interesting to see how we go. You know, from as well, just as a tournament, I think that Martin has done a really good job. The rebranding of it, I think, is really interesting. How they're positioning it in terms of, you know, to try and capture the imagination of the younger demographic as well in terms of rugby. And also, I think the new broadcast partners. So TG Cahir, not a new broadcast partner, they've been with, you know, I think through from the Celtic League all the way through the pro incarnations now into United Rugby Championship. And likewise, I think could have been back as far as 2012, 2013 when RTE were last involved. But RTE, we know, you know, are well capable of producing fantastic sports coverage of huge events. So their experience is going to be brilliant, and having the matches on free-to-air television, I think it's going to be really good. It's going to open up rugby to that bigger audience. Likewise, at TG Cahir, I think over the years they've shown really innovative ways of, you know, with cameras and microphones on the coaches before matches. So you see these inside, behind the scenes type scenarios, which are really good for the viewer too. So you got new broadcasters, you've got a new tournament, you've got a new format, and that it's a single league rather than separate conferences. So I think for the end user, well, for the fan, it's a lot easier to follow. And I think it's going to be really interesting, and we're really looking forward to it, you know. So.
Yeah, I've never subscribed to that notion that putting something on television free to air would actually stop people from going to the ground. I think it actually serves as a reminder of just how great the live experience is. One of the most important elements of it in my eyes this year is the removal of those games that used to go up against international weekends, which meant that the Pro 14 was always just a little bit kind of sidelined. And well, maybe if it wasn't important enough to have its own time and space, then it wasn't important enough for us to watch. But that's all changed now. So it's going to be right up there on the same pedestal, probably with the same team lineups as that you're going to be fielding in the Heineken Cup. Is that important from a player and from a club perspective?
Yeah, I think it's important on both sides. So particularly from a supporter point of view, you know, supporters want to see more of your top players, more of your key players playing more regularly. And that's definitely going to be an option because you're going to have greater squads open to us. But also I think for the players themselves, they want to play in those bigger games. So in particular, when they're playing against now teams that are unknown. So the big franchises coming up from South Africa, you know, the Vodacom Blue Bulls just coming off winning a Currie Cup. So, you know, so again, how are we as the Irish provinces, in our case, Leinster Rugby, going to fare against these teams as well? And, you know, South Africans always have a tendency to be bigger men too. So how do we fare against those bigger men, except, you know, or smaller men in Europe, you know? So listen, I think it's going to be really fantastic. But to your point too, not potentially having clashes, you know, with international weekends for fans, for partners, for sponsors, I think is going to be a boon as well. And you'll probably only really begin to see that during this first season when this really comes into play, which is the first time that they've managed to do that. So again, hats off to Martin and all the team in URC for being able to pull that off.
That sense of energy and enthusiasm coming from not only the fans in the grounds, but also the support of having those commercial backers that are actually standing and sticking by you is something which has been universal across the sporting spectrum.
Yeah.
And it's really important to actually call them out, because everybody was going through exactly the same challenges and difficulties. Have you got any initiatives lined up for the season ahead that are going to be a little bit different, that might reflect the fact that we are living in a world now where things are a little bit different to the way that they were before?
Yeah, I think what will probably be different is that a number of the digital initiatives that we did during COVID, where we were forced to, we're actually going to continue, because many of them were actually innovative, but worked really well for some of our partners. So, for example, doing a virtual match day mascot. So the idea that we will still potentially have mascots that can come to the ground and do that, but there are some, particularly if it's children that are mascots, that may physically not be able to attend a game, but can attend virtually. And so we had some really nice experiences and some really great positive feedback from some family. And Bank of Ireland, again, probably led on that front in terms of with some of their families from staff and from clients and supporters. And we had some really nice moments last year. We're definitely going to keep that going. We're going to keep going with our digital match day program. It now reaches a much bigger audience, because it's not just a physical match day program that's in the grounds. It goes to a much bigger audience. And we've done a new partnership with the Irish Times. And we're delighted to say as well that our match day program is going to be going out to Irish Times subscribers as well. So again, extending the reach of that, which I think is going to be really interesting to see what the response is to that. So there's a number of those digital initiatives that we've done that we'll probably do, a mix and match in terms of part physical and, the actual real life experience, but keeping those digital activities going as well. So that'll probably be for us. There's a number of themes that are going on as well. I know that Bank of Ireland, but they Never Stop Competing platform will be coming into some, updating that and putting some new television ads and new campaigns around that with some of our players, which is going to be really interesting to watch too. So there's going to be plenty going on.
And the fan engagement, it has been great. Like, we've seen the crowds coming back in, and 10,000 pre-season, 20,000 for the opening round of the United Rugby Championship. Has there been a kind of a sense of reluctance in some, though, as well as the enthusiasm of others in terms of re-engaging in the physical activity? And is there anything which you can do as a sporting brand to almost reach your arms out and encourage those who are going to be a little bit slower to come back?
Yeah, I definitely think that's going to take a small bit of time. I think it's going to be, people will look at big events, although I think that's happened. So, I mean, if you remember from the Euros in the UK during the summer, where there was huge amount of fans in the streets and around, particularly for the final. And, some people, particularly in the media in Ireland or other countries, were just sort of aghast looking in and going, wow, is it too early? Is it too soon? But again, no major spike, no major incidents with regards to COVID that could be traced back. I was talking to Martin Murphy, Martin Murphy of Aviva Stadium. And he led that cross-code committee between the FAI, the GAA, and the RFU, of course. And I was talking to him, and that I think he was saying it was it over 400,000 people had gone through the COVID pilot sports events. And there was, I think, only a couple of cases of COVID came out of that 400,000. And then each of those, when they were traced back, actually were traced back to people that had COVID before they came to the event but didn't know. So, and you're seeing that too in some reports coming out of the States in particular, where they're finding that, particularly if you're outdoors, as we know now, they're saying there's potentially a 90% less chance of picking up COVID. But even if you're outdoors and you're amongst your own, in terms of your people, that again, the incidence in terms of transfer is very, very small. So I suppose we've got to, re-emphasize all those messages, make sure that we still want people, of course, when they come to wear their masks, to still follow the guidelines. But there is that personal responsibility piece that, the messaging is going through now from the government, in that it'd be less about restrictions and more about the individual and your own personal responsibility to make sure you look after yourself and others. And I think will probably take it, a few weeks, a couple of months to bed down. But I think as people see the crowd starting to get bigger, you saw it with the GAA finals, and having no issue and people being comfortable with that, I think that people will just naturally become more comfortable and come back in. But it definitely it's on us from a communications point of view to re-emphasize what the rules are in terms of coming back in the stadium, and then to make people as comfortable as possible, make sure the signs are still up, make sure there's still sanitization stations, make sure people can feel comfortable when they come back, and we do everything that we can in that regard too.
Well, and how are things looking across the rest of Leinster Rugby as well? I know that you had great success with the summer camps. You had the Vodafone Interpros that were played over the course of the end of the summer as well, and interesting initiatives like tag rugby for mothers in relation to the camps and stuff like that as well. Right. The broader family of Leinster Rugby, how has that been through the COVID times?
Well, I suppose very difficult up until this summer. So we did manage last summer. So last summer, now I'm talking about summer in, what was that, 2019. So it was like, so trying to came through. So we managed to have a small number of camps that were socially distanced COVID camps. But this summer, again, they pulled out all the stop. The team did an amazing job in that we had more camps and more children at our camps than ever before. And they were still socially all under the COVID protocols and with no cases. So we had one camp that had to move because unfortunately, I think there was, it had been sprayed in terms of from fertilizer, one of the pitches. That was it, nothing related to COVID. So it was a fantastic success in that regard. And I suppose it's interesting to think about that because the provinces are probably unique in the professional sporting sphere in that we have a dual remit in terms of managing the growth of the game, so managing the domestic and community rugby programs as well as running a professional rugby squad. So that's kind of very unique in our case as well. But I believe that uniqueness adds to each of our strengths in terms of how different we are, our approach to it, the size of our panels. And for Leinster Rugby, it's proved great dividends in terms of being in a position where you've got, potentially over 90% of your players are Indigenous, or all have grown up and have played, in the local area and know each other, which is just, which is fantastic. So yeah, listen, they've done a massive amount over a difficult summer in difficult circumstances, but it's been really, really successful. And just coming back there, well, on the club side, deliberately as well in terms of trying to kick off the club season because we would have missed quite a few end of season cup and finals, semi-finals. Now we've run off a number of cups now. They're all coming to conclusion in the next few weeks. Metro Cup and a Metro League Cup as well. And a version of the Towns Cup as well, the Provincial Towns Cup, just to get all the clubs back up and running and give them something to look forward to at the beginning of the season. So, and likewise, finally, what we'll do is the Bank of Ireland Leinster Rugby Junior Schools Cup from last year will actually run now at the end of September. So so that's going to be interesting. It's going to go starting on the 28th, 29th. So sort of next week sometime it's going to be kicking off, where we'll run off just 2 or 3 matches a day in Energia Park in Donnybrook. And so at least, that whole cohort of boys that would have been training, but without matches through school actually have something to look forward to as well. They're now in TY, obviously in transition year, but at least they have something to play for. And I know from my own son's point of view, he's absolutely delighted in terms of that it doesn't feel like all that work or all that training went for nothing in terms of to be able to do it. So yeah, so really, really good progress there as well. And great to see all the clubs coming back, with a lot of players coming back too, which is great to see too.
Well, it has been 18 months that we never want to go through again, but it promises to be a 9 months or maybe even a 10 months that hold out real hope for the future. It will be great to get back involved in sport at the highest level, and well done you on making sure that Leinster Rugby is going to be very much at the heart of that. So for the moment anyway, Kevin Quinn from Leinster Rugby, thanks very much for joining us on Sport for Business.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks very much for having me. And thanks you as well for all your support during difficult times. Sport for Business has been a fantastic platform in terms of trying to get sport back up and operational as we know it. So, and getting people back to enjoying it. So really appreciate that too. Cheers, Rob. Thanks very much.